Hi, I'm Eileen Roach, and welcome to today's episode of Between Friends. Thanks for joining me. We're going to be talking about applique on quilt blocks. It's a common task that many of us do, and I see lots of folks are joining in. Oh, my good friend Dawn Chase up in Virginia from Creative Applique. She says, yay for applique. No wonder, right? Her whole business revolves around applique. So, but I'm not going to lean on Dawn's methods. This is, my take on applique. So everybody's a little bit different for sure. Our friend over in Portugal, thanks for joining us again, Jay Bodner. We love it when you sign in. We just think it's great. And Becky Munns here in North Texas, she says it's a beautiful day, and it is a gorgeous day here in North Texas. I hope many of you were able to see the eclipse this past Monday. We had a great view here in Dallas, so that was a blessing for sure to witness that once in a lifetime thing. So, like I said, today's class is going to be all about applique. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So we're going to talk about prepping the block, then prepping the applique. And, when you do that, if you use software like I do, you have a choice of selecting the finish. It could be a satin stitch, it could be raw edge with just a running stitch, or maybe you would select a decorative finish. So there's so many different ways to finish applique. And we might as well go over and kind of shop the wall so that you can see the products that I use to make my quilt blocks beautiful. But before we do that, I want to share with you what today's episode is brought to you by, and that's Deborah Jones's Compass. She's our resident embroidery guru for sure, and she wrote this embroidery compass several years ago. I have it in my sewing studio, and boy, I refer to it at least every other day. If I'm stitching, I have my compass out, and I would encourage you to do the same. We'll take a closer look at it in a little while later in the program. But for now, let's go over and take a look at the products that I use for applique. And well, that's really for quilt blocks, right? So we're going to kind of shop our wall here. We have two fusibles that I actually use kind of somewhat interchangeably on the applique themselves. One is Fuse and Stick. So that's a pressure sensitive adhesive, and meaning that I can fuse it onto the wrong side of my applique fabric. And then when I remove that protective paper and I just, place the applique down on another piece of fabric, it will stick. It stays there. And I'll show you what I mean. And then, of course, Fuse Me is the fusible web that we love here at Dime. It is it's only fusible by heat, so you do have to use an iron to apply it to the applique fabric. And then when it's time to apply it to the host fabric, to your quilt block, then you remove that protective paper and then it will fuse in place. But, that's for applique. For the stabilizer, for the block itself, we have to do a little bit of work on that also. When I talk about quilt blocks, I'm talking traditional cotton, quilting cotton fabric. So it has a lightweight hand, right? It's designed for quilting, which is a running stitch. And it's not designed to withstand embroidery. So we have to beef it up a little bit. But when we do that, we don't want to make it a thick and cumbersome piece of fabric. We still want it to be a lovely quilt block that will be fluid like the rest of our quilt. So I use Fuse So Soft, and I apply that to the wrong side of my block fabric. Now that's a fusible, and we'll take a look at that under the camera in a minute. And then for the actual stabilization of the embroidery, there's two products that I kind of depends on the stitch count and the satin, the edge of my applique, which one I will select. So if I'm doing raw edge applique or even an E-stitch, then I will use our piece and stitch, which is uh, fairly lightweight, wash away, tear away stabilizer. But if I'm doing something with a strong decorative edge with satin stitches, then I'm going to use the no-show stabilizer, a permanent cutaway that will remain in the block. So let's go ahead over to the overhead camera and take a look at a couple of these. So I know it's just rolls of white stuff, right? But this is the Fuse So Soft. So notice how drapey it is, right? This is a product that is often used to cover the wrong side of embroidery inside a garment to protect the skin, next to the scratchy material of bobbin threads and so forth, often used in children's wear. But it's ideal for adding to the back of or the wrong side of a quilt block because it's going to add just enough strength to just, let it withstand some stitching. Okay, so this is our fusible no-show. Now, I'm not so sure that you can see that this has a sheen to it, but it does. It has a glue that has been sprayed on the wrong side of this material. And when I apply this, lay it onto my quilt block and just fuse it in place, it'll stay there and it just adds some nice body. Now, if I'm doing something that's just a run stitch or an E-stitch, then I'm going to use our piece and stitch. And piece and stitch is it's kind of a tear away, wash away. So it's never going to dissolve like a wash away, but it is going to disintegrate like a tissue would if it as it ran through a washer and dryer. So it'll become very soft, very supple. And you could kind of hear it, right? It sounds a little papery, but we looked at this last week and I showed you what it looks like after it comes out of the wash, and oh my, it's just lovely. So those are the three products that I talk about stabilizing the block. And then when it comes to protecting or adding an adhesive to the applique itself, that's where I like to lean on Fuse Me for some applications, or I like that Fuse and Stick, which is the repositionable and pressure sensitive adhesive. So I think I have a sample that I could show you. Here we go. I do. Let me pull these out. Okay. So these little leaves on the wrong side of these, this is a batik fabric, right? So on the wrong side, maybe you can see there's a little sheen, right? Notice how it's just a bit difference in color from the right side. Maybe it's easier to show you like that. So as you know, batik is the same on the front and the back if it doesn't have something applied to the wrong side. So this is our Fuse Me, very lightweight, and it attaches to the wrong side of the fabric with just kind of a whisper glide of the iron very fast. Now, our Fuse and Stick is a little different. I think one of these is split. Okay, so I just wanted to show you that this is already kind of started here. Let's see if I can get this to separate. Hang on, bear with me. I had so many of these pieces. They can, it really does stick. And so sometimes as you peel it away, like it's going to stay on my hand, right? And I can reposition it until I'm satisfied. So, it just has its own uses, its own application. You'll get comfortable with using it and you'll know when to use it, which one would be preferable for which task. So let's take a look at applique fabrics. So, our cotton fabrics are printed fabrics, right? So their wrong side kind of has obviously a wrong side. It's usually very white. And if you're doing raw edge applique, that wrong side can be visible sometimes. As the fabric frays, if you opt not to use a fusible, it will fray over time. And that's why these fabrics are not always preferred for that type of applique. A batik, on the other hand, is the same front and back. It's dyed all the way through, so doesn't really matter which side you use. Okay, that's just kind of, top level, the difference between those types of fabric. Now I'm going to stash these back where they belong so I keep things in order. And then we're going to take a look at raw edge applique. This is one of my favorite things to do because it's super easy and fast for sure. So let's take a look at, this is a little table mat, a fleur-de-lis table mat, and it has actually 3 layers of fabric. So it has this darker gold in the background. That's laid down first. Actually, what happens here first is the quilting in the blue occurs. And when that is complete, you have a big hole, a big open area, and that tells you, oh, lay down your darker gold because this fabric is kind of in the background. And then it will tack down the outline and also quilt it at the same time. The next thing to do is lay down a lighter yellow fabric and stitch its pretty quilting, these feathers and also an outline. And then lastly, you will do that black band. And these blocks stitch up so quick, and then when they're done, they don't look that great when they come out of the hoop, but then when you just take a moment to trim away that excess, it's not only quilted, but it's appliqued all done in one step. Another favorite block of mine is this really sweet flower basket. Now, this came from a book that I wrote many years ago, and it was 2 hooping. So first we applied the basket and then the top. We have some layers of applique here. I'll bring that up a little closer so you can take a look at this flower. Actually has 2 layers, right? So first we placed that light pink down, stitched its tack down, and then added the interior flower petals, that deeper red, and then finally the center. So that's really 3 different layers. And of course, some of this layers on top of the basket. And it just makes the process of layering applique really fast. If there were satin stitches, say underneath, outlining the edge of the basket, it would probably bleed through these petals. And if not be visible, it would at least be raised. So that would probably be undesirable. But, this is a little project that has a lot of impact, but finishes stitches up very quickly. And all of these were trimmed in the hoop. I didn't do any pre-cutting. I just lay down squares larger than the outline. And then once it's out of the hoop, already tacked down, I trim it. And so that's a great use for raw edge applique. Okay. Several months ago, we did a continuous applique, and this is the sample from that. So our base fabric is this white border. This will eventually become a border on a quilt. And this batik, notice that's a batik, right? Has, it's a very long piece. It goes all the way, I don't know, it's going to go like 60 inches eventually, right? But this technique of raw edge applique allows me to use one long continuous piece of applique fabric so that I can multi-hoop and multi-hoop. Could I do it with a satin? Probably, but this is so much more forgiving, right? Like right here is the join. So I'll lift that up so you can see how not perfect it is, right? When you look really close, it's off. It's probably not even a whole millimeter, but who cares, right? It's just an ocean wave, raw edge applique. The impact is the high contrast, the blue and the white. That's really what the eye sees. That's what impresses the eye. So, raw edge applique is very forgiving in that sense and allows you to do fast work. And, this quilt will never be laundered, right? It's not going to go through the wash. It's just going to be a wall hanging. And I would dust it, but that would be about it, right? There'd be no real reason to launder it. So that's a good use for raw edge. So before we move on to our next tray, let's see what kind of questions we have. Julie Ann, you say that flower basket is super cute. It is super cute. So fun. It's really fun. And let's see. Can you use the fuse and stick? Okay. Can the fuse and stick be used in a cutting machine? That's a good question, Monica. And I don't know that answer. My guess is going to be no. That's I haven't tested it. Um, so my guess would be that it would be difficult to use in a cutter because let's move over to the idea of fuse and stick in a cutter. So fuse and stick, we fuse to the wrong side of the applique fabric, and then I remove the protective paper from the applique, and then I place my applique fabric on my cutting machine. This is a digital cutter with the right side down. I do not want my fuse me to touch my cutting mat, okay? Now you may have to mirror image your design, but so when I do that and the blade travels around and cuts it out, I don't have any drag on the fabric. It just cuts beautifully. I have tested it when I keep the paper on, and what happens is the paper and the fabric want to separate during the cutting motion, and then it drags. The fabric starts to drag in one direction and the paper in another. I would bet that that would occur in the fuse and stick, but try it out. Now, fuse and stick would definitely work in an AccuQuilt cutter because they just stay together. There's no blade traveling. It's just a die, right? And slamming down on it. So that does work. Okay, let's see. Retha Ranke says, I've had my compass for a while. Has it changed? It has not changed. But if you have one, so you're good to go. But if you take any classes, get two so that you can have one in class. Let's see. And Tony Smith, for fusible, are there temp guides for the iron versus a press? Good question. I think there are somewhat of a guide. No, just medium and high. So yeah, but you should always go to our website. I think we might have more detailed instruction on our website on those fusibles. But I really haven't had any issue with too hot, one of the problems can be is that you either don't press it long enough or the iron is too cool. And if that occurs, when you go to separate the paper from the fuse me after it's ironed onto the fabric, you'll notice that it doesn't want to separate easily. So then just iron it again, put it back down and iron it. And then once it's cool and then you peel it away, then it just comes off really nice, really nice. So Lori wants to know, if you left the paper on the fuse and stick, well, you most certainly could try it. And so just take a little scrap, right? Just a little square, because you don't want to harm fabric or the fuse and stick or your blade or anything like that. Give it a try. But I have not tested it. So should have done that before today. Okay, so let's move over to, kind of a cute project that's in the works. And maybe you're already familiar with this. I got a lot of stuff here, so let's take a look. Okay, so this magazine is fairly current. It's American Patchwork and Quilting. And this cover, this log cabin, I just thought was so charming. You're supposed to, this is on display, so on sale through the end of April. And I guess it hit the newsstands in February. And when I saw it, I just thought, oh, spring, right? That looks like a fun project. And it has, here, let's open that up so you can see. It gives you a great diagram on, how to make the log cabin and then how you do some of these little blocks inside. So there's a star, there's a heart, and there's a house here. So each of these three things are pieced as far as these instructions from American Patchwork and Quilting go. And that's an awful lot of fun, but hey, I have an embroidery machine, right? So I did piece my stars. Some of my stars are done, super fun, right? Tiny little pieces. It's like putting a jigsaw puzzle together. So here's one block with my star already completed, all pieced. Now, next up, I created this block with a blank center, knowing that I wanted to applique the heart or the house on it. So I'm going to, now, of course, it's white fabric, but maybe you can see that I used my Fuse So Soft, right? First, I fused that onto the wrong side here. I could peel it away just a little bit here so you could see. To the wrong side of my applique fabric. When I cut it, I did it to a larger piece of fabric and then cut it and pieced it right into my log cabin. And then using a template and so forth, I added this little excuse me, house. So he is appliqued with an E-stitch, his roof is a satin stitch, and it has an embroidered heart. I just think that's so charming. So in order to do that, I added the no-show mesh to the wrong side of the whole quilt block because all of this was in a 5x7 hoop. My square here is only 4x4, but I wanted to have, a generous size hoop so I wouldn't worry about the placement. So I fused this to the wrong side and then stitched it. Now I will release this. Remember we talked about how I can iron that to make sure it separates from the fabric, and then I'll just trim it away. And you won't even see it. I'll use my pinking shears and it'll just be fine. So that was the house. Isn't that sweet? And I can show you where that house is. So why don't we go over and play this video and I'll show you where I found that house. It is in our Patch and Applique Maker software.
On Applique Designs and select the Birds category and Birdhouse 3. Click OK. Right-click on the design to ungroup, and let's remove that stem. We don't need that. And now we'll select the applique, and we're going to change that to an E-stitch. Change our applique width to 2.0. We want a nice narrow width. We're going to change our inset to 100 and remove the tack down. And click Apply.
And so the reason why I did those steps, first off, you most certainly in our Patch and Applique Maker software, you can control the width of your E-stitch. So when we talk about width on an E-stitch, that's the swing of the needle that takes a bite of the applique fabric before it advances along the edge of the applique to the next stitch, right? So hand applique, you want it to be almost invisible, right? So I like to bring that down to about a 2.0. But it can, if you like it to be more visible, then most certainly you can keep it at 4.0, its default, or even make it wider. Now, you'll also notice that I removed a tack down stitch because that would be visible. So I don't want to stitch the tack down stitch. I have my placement guide, and because I've added Fuse Me to the wrong side of my house that I pre-cut, I just place that into that opening and iron it, and then, in the hoop, I keep it right in the hoop, iron it, and then go reattach it to the machine and finish it. So that's a nice way to do that. And then what else did I do? I also changed the position of the tack down to 100%, not the tack down, the placement guide, because I want to make sure that my outside edge of my E-stitch aligns with the placement guide. So just those steps in our software and you'll be really comfortable. You'll get a beautiful result. Okay, let's go back over and take a look at our next block. So here we have the heart, and I'm hooped, right? So this heart is, I already pre-cut this, and I have my Fuse Me on there, so I can just peel that off, and I'll peel all of it off. And here, I want you to see that. So I piece my fuse me, right? Sometimes I don't have a big piece, but that's okay. You just butt it up to, the smaller strips. It's fusible. I mean, it's not a seam or anything, so that works really fine. So once I have this all removed and in position, I will then lay this down and I'll iron that in place, right? Make sure everything is aligned, and I'll take my iron and press it, and then I will stitch my next color, which will be the E-stitch. And I like to use a monofilament thread for that step because I don't want you to see my E-stitch. I want it to look like it was handwork, almost invisible. So that's the thread I'll use for that. And no, we don't sell it. A lot of people make it. I don't really have a favorite, sorry. I just kind of whatever's in my sewing room. And so then that block would be complete. But let's flip this over and take a look at the stabilizer that I use. This time I used the piece and stitch, believe it or not, because it's only going to do that outline and then it's going to do an E-stitch. It didn't have a satin roof. It didn't have that other heart that's on the inside. So it didn't need more, stabilization. It's just that piece and stitch is going to be fine. And then I'm going to tear it away. So isn't that fun? Okay, let me see if you have any questions about that before we move on. Linda Johnston says, I love, love, love monofilament thread. Well, you're a brave woman, Linda, because a lot of people are fearful of monofilament thread. And I understand why. It can be stretchy, right? And it's invisible. When 20 years ago, not a problem. Today, a little bit. Anyway. And let's see. Tony Smith wants to know, can the ruler tape on the frame be purchased for my dime hoops that I already own? Absolutely. You can purchase those. They are just in our shopping cart, dzgns.com, and search for, what do we search for? Centering guides, I believe is what they are called, because they're not rulers. Okay, so let's see. So I want to show you a way to add a applique to a quilt that's already done. So I know many of you who love to quilt for no reason. You make beautiful things. You don't really have a use for them or an intention for that finished quilt. Like, oh, this would make a great baby quilt, or this would make a great home, home warming quilt, right? But you don't have a recipient in mind yet. But you know that eventually a family member is going to welcome a new baby into the family or maybe move into a new home. So you can add an applique to a quilt that's already done. So I thought I would show you this quilt here. Has been kind of hanging around our dime office forever, right? And it's beautifully quilted. It is all custom quilted, as you could see. It has beautiful, was done in white. So all of the quilting is one thread, all the same thread. So, but what if there's a new little girl and welcoming in the family and you want to personalize it? Well, you most certainly could by appliquing a great big heart on it in a coordinating color like this, and then maybe adding some smaller hearts. And, I just did this heart really kind of quickly this morning to give you an idea. But wouldn't it be lovely if you monogrammed their initials, right? You took, a big letter E or M or D, and then it's personalized and it's finished. When you do that, I suggest that you only use an E-stitch because on the wrong, or a raw edge, because on the wrong side, you don't really want to see the wrong side of satin stitches. And I have an example of that. So just, as those quilts stack up in your house, like they might be, like they are in my house, someday you'll want to pass it on to someone. So here's an adorable little quilt, right? Little like table topper. But this word was added after it was quilted. So you would not want to give a gift with this probably on the back, right, of the quilt. So that's why an E-stitch, it's a little more, it's a lot more subtle, than that. So especially if you're doing lettering, because this lettering, obviously, it's the wrong side. It's a mirror image. It definitely has a wrong side. So just consider that if you have some project that you want to repurpose or give it a new home, right? Okay, so let's see. I'm going to move this out of the way, and then we have some, and we'll talk about satin edges, all right? Because that's the traditional way to finish many appliques. And this example here is glitter. So this is our Caesar glitter. Isn't that adorable? Just beautiful. It has so much shine and sparkle. And I paired it with our King Star metallic thread. But here is the very same block in traditional colors and traditional finishes. So all of these applique fabrics are batik, and so is the quilt block itself, actually. And but the satin stitches are really bold, and they cover all the edges of the applique. And many people, that's how they consider it to be finished, is if it has a satin stitch, because it's just is the tradition, just is the tradition. So another example that I wanted to show you is some decorative stitches that you could experiment with. And so before we do that, let's see if there's any questions. Laurie, you say, no, nothing scares you except centipedes? Okay, I don't have any of them here. We don't have to worry about that. And Laurie, it does look like a folk art block. It does, but it's kind of like, funkier fabrics, right, than a traditional William Morris, let's say. Okay, so, everybody loves satin stitching, though. And if you're going to do satin stitching, what kind of stabilizer are we going to use there, right? We're definitely going to use that no-show, the fusible no-show. That's the one that is going to provide a stronger stabilization for the satin stitching, because you don't want a whole, you don't want puckers. Okay, so now let's take a look at this fun block that I just started. So now I'm like branching out a little bit. I'm going to bring this up so you can see it. Bring it up to the camera a little bit. I've got all these boards here and stuff. Okay, so see those decorative stitches? Look at them. Aren't they nice? Aren't they beautiful? So it kind of gives like a thorny finish to those leaves. For the stems, I opted to just fuse it down, raw edge, no finish at all, just free form. And then I am going to use that very same tulip. And on this time, I did use the, what do we call that? All these names. The fusion stick, right? Fusion stick. Okay, and so I'm just going to separate this from the paper. Takes a little doing because it's a nice firm hold. And then once we get that separated, peel that off, and then we stick that down, it's going to stay in position. There we go. Take a minute. And now I'll go back to the machine, and it's going to stitch the satin edge of the tulip. And it's also going to stitch a placement guide for the center, like bud, right? And then I'll place that in position, and it will finish off that just like this. That is the same flower. I just did a different stem, but same flower, and really fun. That's going to be a beautiful block. I like that. There is a lot of other decorative stitches that you can apply to appliques, and let's just kind of take a look at them. So here is some hexagons that really, they're just fused fabric onto this piece of fabric. And actually, this is our print and stick target template paper that I'm just auditioning the finishes on. So look how fun these finishes are. So I love this kind of star, 4-pointed star. And, I can just audition this and decide if this is the one that I want to use for that particular hexagon, or I can match it. Like in this case, we have these pretty flowers. So I can match that to this patch here, this hexagon that has these pretty little flowers. I mean, that's a very interesting applique. I like that. And now on this hexagon with this kind of stamped circular pattern, how about if we use one that has half circles on the outside? So this is a way to kind of look at it without even stitching yet, but super fun. Let me show you how to do that in software. Okay, I have to get my right. All right, so here we are in Patch and Applique Maker. So Patch and Applique Maker is our standalone, well, kind of, yeah, it's a standalone software program that lives in our Embroidery Toolshed. As you remember, Embroidery Toolshed is our free program that anybody can download, and it will allow you to resize any design and copy, paste, print a template, that kind of thing. But in Patch and Applique Maker, you got all kinds of stuff. I mean, you have drawing tools, like here's your rectangle, ellipse, triangle, star, rounded, rectangle, hexagon, leaf, heart, flower, all kinds of fun things. And there are a gazillion shapes in here that you can choose from that will allow you to make an applique. But I've already made my hexagon, so I'm just going to select it. And it is already an applique. So from the type menu, I have so many choices. So I'm going to go, oh, you can't see the drop downs. Oh, okay. So, all right, just bear with me a minute. If we could drop out that screen so I could reshare the screen. So just bear with me while I do that. Let's see. I'm going to stop sharing and then reshare. And I'm going to present the whole screen. There we go. And then I'll bring up the software. Okay, so let's try now. Okay. Yes, so from the drop-down window, I have lots of choices. Tackle twill, E-stitch, motif, special symbol, advanced stippling, run, bean, two-ply, all these things, right? So I'm going to look at the special symbol because they're pretty fun. And I have a list, which, you know, okay, that's a list, doesn't do much for you. But if you click here on the ellipse, right, and select the word select, then you get this whole window, this whole library of choices, which are really fun. So let's look at it in candle wicking. That's a very popular finish that people love to see. Look how attractive that is. All right. So let's change it again. And this time we're going to go to one of my favorites, which is this, the lace edging. Let's try that. And I'm going to zoom in so you can get a good look at that. Look how pretty that is. That's really delicate and looks just lovely stitched out. It really does. So you can play with all of these different choices. I'm going to go ahead and select it again, and we'll just get over to the center. Oh, we didn't want to do that. Here, we can move that away from our backdrop. I left that little image of the software there on the screen so you would know which one what software program I was in. A lot of people aren't always sure which one we're talking about. Another favorite of mine is the shark tooth. So let's go ahead and select that. And look at that. How bold. Isn't that awesome? Imagine if that was, you know, I don't know, an applique maybe for a young boy who would just, you know, kind of love that look. And another favorite is this wave. Look at that. And I'm going to zoom in so you can see how it just kind of curls around. Oh, these are really fun. So many different choices that you have to play with. And you can do jagged edges. This is often attractive, you know, for Lots of different reasons. If you just, it's like an exaggeration. Yeah. Mhm. Okay. Oh, and Jay Bernard says, what is an E-stitch? Okay, so let me go ahead and apply that so you can see. So this is an E-stitch. And I'm going to zoom in so you can get a good look. And I'm going to change my width. So with it selected here in the box, here's our applique width. How about if we make it really big so you could see what happens? So now it's going to take a big bite into the applique fabric. And the inset, I want to change to 100% so that the placement guide is in the same location as the outside of my E-stitch. And then I want to remove that tack down. So see that line of stitching right here? That would actually stitch on top of my applique, and it would result in an undesirable look. So I'm going to select none and click apply. And now I have a really attractive E-stitch. And let me go through that so you can see. So that's my placement guide, right? That's going to be the absolute edge of my E-stitch when I add that E-stitch. All right. So remember, we set that at a very wide E-stitch. That you would use that if you are stitching on maybe a fleece fabric. Think of like, it's also called the blanket stitch. And it may remind you of the edge of a blanket, right? And in order to get a longer stitch length, like you would see on a blanket, then we're just going to go ahead and change that stitch length to a little bit longer. And now you can see how that would, maybe appeal to someone who's doing it on fleece. So, but I'm doing it on cotton quilting, so I'm going to narrow that applique width to 2.0. And I'm probably going to change my stitch length probably to about a 4 so that I have a little bit of distance between each E-stitch. And that's going to result in a really lovely applique. It won't have too much thread biting into the applique itself. And since I like to use a monofilament thread, it will be practically invisible. So what if you don't have monofilament thread? Well, lots of E-stitch applique is stitched with black thread. Believe it or not, it gives you that bold finish, and it's admirable. It's kind of like a black outline in a coloring book. So that's one choice. The other is to match the thread to the applique fabric. That would be the least noticeable, right? It would just kind of blend with your applique fabric. So, yeah. Oh, and Esther Hopwood. Hello, Esther. Nice to see you here. She says blanket stitch is her favorite for applique because it hides your mistakes. Really? Well, good for you. But I'm not so sure that I agree with that statement, because I think, a blanket stitch, you really have to nail the cutting of the applique because it's so visible, right? The edge is so visible. But I like it because it just looks like handwork. So, and I've always said that handwork is kind of like, 4-letter word, right? Hand is 4-letter word, so I don't often do that. Okay. What's in the bobbin with monofilament on the top? Good question. So traditionally, I would say to match the bobbin thread to the back of the quilt, well, not in this instance, so to the base fabric. You have to be careful about your tension, because in an embroidery design, the tension wants to be pulled to the back of the work, which is desirable. But I've noticed, because monofilament thread is so stretchy, it tends to pull the bobbin thread to the top. So I use the same color thread as my quilt block. So if I have a white block, I'm going to use white bobbin thread on them, and in the bobbin, and monofilament in the top. So, yeah, okay. And let's see, Chris Kavanaugh says monofilament usually breaks even when I use a different needle. Well, it's probably because your tension's too tight. It does want to snap, it's a slithery thing. It is. It's not for everybody, for sure. Not for everybody. And let's see, Tony Smith said variegated thread is a great choice for the E-stitch. I'll bet it is. On some fabrics, that would be just beautiful. And maybe I should experiment with that. I didn't do any of that. Let's see. Okay. But it's fun, isn't it? Yeah. And Marianne de Blago says another great reason that she loves Pan. Who would have thought to use it for applique? Well, patch and applique maker. That's what it's all about, right? It is super fun. So, I wanted to share with you. Let's take a look at that compass, huh? Let's get that underneath the camera so you could see what a tool this is. I know some of you already have it, but if you don't, this is the week, the time to get it, because it's on discount for only $20. And I'm telling you, I have one in my my travel bag that just lives there, and then I have one in my studio at home, and of course we have it here in the office. And we have multiple people using machines here, so we often refer to it. Instead of, asking each other, we know that Deborah has provided the right answer. So what do? Well, on the outer wheel is a list of different fabrics. And so you just slide that dial till you hit the fabric that you're using today. Like here we have lacy lycra spandex. And in this window, it's telling me to use Stable Sport or Stretchy Knit Stabilizer, Polypro Performance. Those are my three choices that will result in a beautiful stitch. It even gives me my needle size and type, because we have ball part, ball point, and sharps, and of course all the different sizes. So, and then down here are some personal comments from Deborah telling you, to make sure that the backing is secured on all edges and so forth. Gives you some hooping tips and so forth. And it's not just limited to these fabrics on the wheel, it's two-sided. So it has another whole set on the other side. And again, you just spin that top dial till you get to the fabric at hand. Like here we have denim. So that's going to tell us we need a medium soft tearaway or medium firm tearaway, the needle size, and then she tells you to hoop it. You don't always hoop everything that's in here. So Deborah, what a wealth of information she has provided to the whole industry throughout her whole career. And now she's put this in such a handy device. No studio should be without the embroiderer's compass. And it's on sale this week, which is a great thing. Great thing. So let's see. I want you to take advantage of that. So if we could take a look at PowerPoint over here, we have the special, which shows us that it is $19.99. It'll be the best $20 you'll ever spend as an embroiderer. So next up, next week, I'm back with a new product reveal, and I'm so excited to share it with you. It's for big hoop owners only. So we never do that, but this project is one that just kind of called to my heart and I thought, let's do this for the jumbo hoop owners because, they often don't get a special product that's been developed just for them. So that's what we're going to do next week. And it is a little bit more of quilting, but you're going to do it all in the hoop. And oh my gosh, it's so cool. It's so cool. You'll love it. And then after that, before that, on Tuesday, the 16th, Ashley Jones will be here and she'll be doing getting started with the new Edge-to-Edge plugin. Now that's a new software program. And that was developed with Christine Connor of Amelia Scott Designs, the author of Edge-to-Edge Quilting. And so this is a new product that's in there, and Ashley's going to be walking you through that, and it'll be dynamite for sure. And I know that you don't want to miss one of these episodes, so we would really encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and like us on Facebook, because when you do that, that tells us we're providing you with the information that you like to receive. So, and in order for us to know what you've been stitching, you need to share it on social media. So if you would do that and share it with the hashtag #DimeSewAlong, hashtag on the house, or hashtag exquisite thread, we'll find it and we'll share it with all of our viewers like we are right here in this reel. Let's take a look. Oh, wow. Aren't they fantastic? I love seeing what you're doing and so many great samples. So please share on social media and tag it so we can find it. If you're looking for today's design, I'm going to show it to you in just a minute, but this is where you're going to find it on our website. Just go to Projects Free Designs, and that will take you to the On the House page where you can download this week's design and all of the On the House designs from 2024. So I hope you'll take advantage of it. And wait, do you see what Deborah Jones came up with for this week? Are you ready? This is in preparation for Mother's Day. This sweet bear with her cub in a bed of roses, just adorable. It uses such delicate colors of our exquisite 40 weight polyester thread line. Just a beautiful blend of springtime and, Mother's Day. So let's see. Linda Johnston wants to know, is there another way to share for us the no Facebook people? Maybe one of our team members can chat in there for sure, give you an option because we want to see them for sure. Okay, let's see. Claire, you say the best monofilament thread you have used is sold by Creative Feet by Claire Rowley. Good for you. Okay, haven't tried that, so I can't endorse it, but everyone's always looking for good recommendations for a monofilament thread. So I hope that you'll take advantage of the free download of that adorable bear with her cub, and that you will also take advantage of this week's special. And thank you for joining me today, and I look forward to gathering with you again here next week when we'll do a new project with Jumbo Hoops.